The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it Tuesdays here at Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark. We'll see if the rain goes away for 6:05 first pitch. Nebraska Creighton, the sequel, and see if Nebraska can kind of snap out of their funk. We'll dive into some Nebraska baseball. Plenty of thoughts from post-practice today from Matt Rhule and Garrett McGuire. The wide receivers, the topic du jour. What do you think of the wide receiver room as a Nebraska fan? How much throwing will this team truly do? Well, it looks like you've got candidates to do so at quarterback. You feel good about the receiver room. Will it come together? We'll talk with Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Mitch about 15 minutes away. In hour two, Michael Bruntz should be around the Haymarket region. I don't know that we'll get to stream Bruntsy, but Michael Bruntz will join us to get going, and plenty of room for you in hour one. In hour two, can dial up at 489-1240 or 800-825-5865. Is there a movie you guys think of when storms roll through the region? There's two movies that come to my mind.
Oh,
Twister?
yes. Yes.
No.
Food. I love Twister.
You're going to go Twister on me.
I
What the
love
hell
Twister.
else is there to think of?
Well, I think of Shawshank or I think of Goonies.
Goonies is somewhat fair.
I love Twister so much.
Now, are you thinking Shawshank? Is that just a good day or good time to like waste 3 hours while a storm rolls through? Why do you think of a storm?
I don't know, because Andy Dufresne escaped during a storm.
Okay, that's fair. Most of the movie does not occur in a storm, though.
Oh, I bet it does.
Twister is still the right answer.
Twister's awesome. I used to watch that movie with my dad all the time. That movie's awesome.
The 220-year-old Twister.
Twister.
My favorite week of high school was whenever Mr. Gatula, Coach Gatula, just showed us Twister for a week in class while he was like...
Game planning?
I think he was ordering new uniforms for the football team for the next season.
Priorities.
And we watched Twister. It was the best. I love that movie. And they're doing the remake now. It's probably going to be
It's
terrible.
going to ruin it, yeah.
Who's in the remake?
I don't even know. I don't even know who's in the original.
We know who's not.
Let's see. The cast of the new Twister includes Glenn Powell, the guy from Anyone But You, starring alongside Sydney Sweeney.
Is she in it?
No, unfortunately. I don't know if I recognize any other names.
That's the dirty old man. Is she in it? Okay, who is your...
Daisy Edgar Jones? You know Daisy Edgar
No,
Jones? She looks familiar.
no.
Katie O'Brien? Yeah, no, most of the names I do not recognize. But Glenn Powell, he's good.
All right. Well, I just had to, because, it's been gray, it's been thundery, there's been some lightning, and you just have it moving through most of central and eastern Nebraska. So dealing with an angry Mother Nature, and hopefully baseball gets in tonight. We'll get our starting five shout-outs. Grandpa is in. That's right, NU Grandpa, followed by Eat Beef. He says, hola. Jeff in at 3, Black Hills Brennan 4. Tim is here at 5. And a new handle, NMZ 1988, is in at 6. Brandon checks in at 7 as we keep rolling through. Walter is here in the bathroom. Walter in Philly is in the can. Brian Snitley says, what's up? We going to get the game in tonight? Or will Creighton rush to the bus before the tarp is even on the field again? Good question asked by part of the Boulder Peace Treaty, Mr. Brian Snitley. You have Brennan asking. Brennan says Sydney Sweeney could stop a Twister in its tracks. Fair take. Fair take.
I was going to try and start the conversation about the baseball game tonight, and then that popped up. So, I mean,
and then you have...
Well, that's the question here. Do we talk about a baseball game likely to get delayed or canceled, or Sydney Sweeney? I know what I want to talk about.
Bane Shady says, I think the new Twister movie is a sequel, not a reboot.
I think it's like The Sun is supposed to be the new... It's like the new Ghostbusters movie. Yeah, it's a sequel, but it's a remake.
Okay.
That's kind of my take on what I've seen from the early reports.
I might go watch Twister tonight then. I don't think I've seen that movie in probably close to 10 years. And I'm talking as if I'm like 50, but like I haven't seen that movie in a long time.
Good cast.
Yeah. Very
far-fetched to tie yourself to a swing set and...
Well...
hang on for dear life.
Of course. That's what makes it fun.
Did it make either of you want to be a storm chaser?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I also watched the show on Discovery Channel that followed the storm chasers around the Midwest. I love that show.
With Reed Timmer?
Yes. Yeah.
You are opening a can of worms right now that may never be shut.
No, I wanted to be a storm. And like every single time that they would pass through Nebraska on the show, I'd like cheer.
Oh, that show was great.
I love that show.
I used to make my mom sit down and watch that with me every Sunday night because I was like obsessed. I was like a 7-year-old.
I wanted to see them get the TIV inside the tornado, which they did finally do in Nebraska.
They did do that, yes. I didn't realize it was in Nebraska.
Was it not?
Dusty Davis, notable OU fan. Apparently.
Who?
It's a Dusty Davis, notable OU fan. Because
he was wearing an Oklahoma hat.
Well, yeah, because they have a storm.
Well, Tornado Alley, right?
Well, sure, but they're one of their majors is meteorology down there, and they send a lot of storm chasers and pick 'em up trucks out into the wild blue yonder.
By the way, I looked up. Reed Timmer was inside the tornado in Bushnell, Nebraska.
Look at that.
That's where. So he did intercept, and he did get inside the tornado. That footage released. Was that 2 years ago now? Maybe a year ago. Whenever they made it inside the tornado. So I don't think they ever made it like truly inside a tornado on the Discovery Channel.
They
show.
made it was a couple like super tiny ones.
Yeah, where
they're
they're like on the edge.
Yeah, you don't really count, but
says the Chicago kid.
Yeah,
well, it doesn't really count.
It's true. Either you're inside the tornado or you're not.
Okay, just because I live near a Great Lake doesn't mean I don't know what a tornado looks like.
I know, but does it have to be an EF3 for it to count for you?
Sure. I don't know. It's just got to be on the scale.
Well,
and these like
barely registered.
Yeah, I don't know.
The one like last year that was a 3. I think it was an EF3 or was an EF4. It was a good sized tornado. I know it wasn't a 5.
A 3 is like halfway up the scale. I did a report on this.
Thank you, Connor.
A long time ago.
Five flattens your town. Tiger Shark Diver says I hid under my bed this morning due to inclement weather and tried to call Chris and Elijah for support. Hang in there. We got nothing for rain, Dion. Could use the rain. On a serious note, a guy we really enjoy and love hearing and listening to, Greg Sharp, announced last night that he is battling cancer. And Sharp is incredible, always pleasant, always just wonderful, and as good as it gets in the business. And Jeff, you echo all of Husker Nation with your comment here on the stream, bud. Sad news about Greg yesterday. Wish him the best of luck. Amen.
Yeah, Greg is a guy that, is the voice of Nebraska to me growing up. Like, it was always only Greg Sharp. And as you grow older and get into the industry, it's great whenever the person behind the voice backs it up. And Greg is one of those people that who he is absolutely backs up what you hear on the radio. He's a great broadcaster, even better person.
Yep.
And somebody that just... We've talked a lot about Matt Rhule and his coaching staff and body in the state of Nebraska. Greg Sharp is a guy with his work ethic, his dedication, his talent that really, truly embodies the state of Nebraska. He loves this state, and state loves him right back. We've seen a whole bunch of outpouring of support. I'll join in on that.
Sure.
Hoping for the best for Greg. We know he's going to go kick cancer's ass. So that was sad news to hear last night, but we were with him in that journey.
For sure. I wanted to make sure we mentioned that. And a listener making sure to send best wishes to Greg, and we all nod and say absolutely. 489-1240, number to get in here on Hail Varsity. Let's spend a minute on some baseball, fellas. Long season. Will Bolt was on last night with Greg on the network, and Will really had a pretty good perspective with the runs scored, you outscore Rutgers 26-14. Saturday helped a lot with that.
Yes.
But from a pitching standpoint, it's not like you didn't lead deep into the contest Friday. And from a start on Sunday, you didn't get off to an awful start, but you just couldn't throw some strikes.
You're never out of the game.
No, you weren't. But you just didn't get it done. Nebraska's 2 out of 3 in Big Ten series. You're getting to a really tough stretch where you reeled off 10 in a row, and now you're 3-5 since that 10-game win streak. You leave Lawrence scoring, 11 runs, and that should have been enough. It wasn't. Level of concern with Nebraska's pitching right now. Friday, Saturday, not really, but I'm talking bullpen, I'm talking midweek, I'm talking Sunday. 10 is, oh no, and they're not at 10, but I'd say they're at a fair 5 right now.
Well, Connor, you brought up a good point for the show. I'm going to ask you to rephrase that again here in just a second. I just want to say, the margin of error for this Husker baseball team with what's happened in the past 2 weeks, I don't want to say it's gotten razor thin, but it's gotten much thinner in terms of making a regional in a good spot. Being a 1 or a 2 seed in a regional, I'm not sure hosting a regional's in the cards this year unless they really turn it back on to finish this season. Still a very good baseball team. I still think unless the wheels completely fall off, you should be making a regional. But if you want to be in a spot where you can go compete and go win a regional, being a 1 or a 2 seed, you got to start picking up.
Where do you get sent?
I mean,
is that 2?
Yeah, exactly,
right?
Exactly. It's a case to me of now, I don't think you can afford to lose another Big Ten series just based on where the Big Ten is at. And we talked about it last week with Evan.
Agree.
This is the stretch of the season that defines what you are going to be in 2024. Rutgers, Maryland, Iowa, back-to-back-to-back weekend series. You couldn't get it done against Rutgers. You're on the road, and you really were in a position to win all 3 of those games. You couldn't do it. It happens. That's baseball for you. I don't think the alarm bells are going off just yet with this team. Combine it with the midweek results, and you go, it's a little bit of a concern, but you still have everything to play for in the remainder of the regular season, and I don't think dropping 1 series is going to hurt you. It starts to become a problem if you drop a series against Maryland, or you drop a series against Iowa, or Lord forbid, end of the season's coming up, you're dropping 1 to Minnesota or to Michigan State. I mean, it's fine baseball teams, but it's teams you're expected to beat. And that's what the remainder of the season is going to be for Husker baseball. Warning bells aren't going off, but your margins are shrinking in terms of what you need to do in order to go put yourself in a good spot to go win a regional.
2 things. 1, this is a great time for Nebraska to try and turn around because they played 9 of their next 10 games at home.
Yes.
And obviously you have the 2 weekend series in there. You have the game, hopefully, tonight against Creighton. And then you also have Kansas State in there for 1. But what Elijah and I were talking about before the show, this is nuts. Nebraska has back-to-back pitchers of the week in the Big Ten, and they're 1-4 in their last 5 games. Now, I know that says a lot about the bullpen, and obviously there could be some fixing there. There could be some fixing in the midweek. Actually, a lot of fixing in the midweek. And then on Sunday, that starter spot is still kind of a question mark. And aside from 2021, and I feel like this has been the case, and maybe this is just me, but I feel like this has been the case ever since I got to school here. Freshman year, obviously, the team was great, won the Big Ten, had a shot to beat Arkansas. Fun team to watch. It's been the same thing, I feel like, ever since then. The Sunday starter can't quite figure it out. The midweek starter can't quite figure it out. The back half of the bullpen, it's either lights out or it's, oh no. I mean, how do you go about fixing that? Because, yeah, I mean, it's... when you boil it down, it's simple. Baseball's a silly game. You don't put runners on base, right? Throw strikes, right? Don't give up hits, right? Obviously, it's a little bit more complicated than that. What is the formula to change that narrative? Because this has been a 2.5-year problem, in my opinion, I think.
Well, it has been, and it just comes down to, and Will Bolt put it best last night, we talked Christo, right? And you just got to make better pitches. I mean, it is as simple as that, and it's easy to sit here and say, but when you're on the mound and you've got a 1-1 count, where does it go on that third pitch? Is it a ball? Is it a strike? And even if you're up 2 strikes on a guy, are you getting too much of the plate, fellas, with that out pitch? Rutgers at one point Sunday was 3 for 6 with, I think, either 2 strikes or 2 outs, and that's a credit to them. But Nebraska right now, and Will, to be fair, said a lot of teams, because you see some ranked teams, Elijah, get hurt in the midweek. You're just not that deep to have a rock star midweek. Your midweek guy is somebody you've groomed to go there, or you're trying to figure out where you want to go with Sunday versus and midweek.
Well, I love the point that Connor made, saying baseball is a funny sport. It's a funny game. It really is. Because in baseball, especially in a midweek game, 3 pitches could define a game. Mm-hmm. And you don't get, occasionally in football, you'll get 3 plays that define a game, whenever it's absolute disaster plays. Or sometimes you'll get a couple possessions in basketball where a team goes on a 9-0 run, changes the complexion of the game. But in baseball, more than anything, that's almost every game where just a couple of pitches in a game change the outcome of a game. Baseball's a funny sport. That's why I'm not going to go complete disaster alarm bells going off with what's happened in the past 2 weeks, because baseball is a little bit unique in that sense. But you got to start stacking some wins, because time's running out in the Big Ten. You only have so many series left, and let's be honest, there's not that many teams in front of you that are like wow wins that you can have that can really put on your tournament.
There's one tonight.
One tonight to get right. You have a couple series, but for the most part, you just got to go out there and win to make it into the tournament, because the Big Ten's not going to impress anyone.
Nope, got to do some work. We'll see where Nebraska's at. Mitch Sherman's next.
It's that time.
Hey, Mitch. Mitchie, we're looking for you, pal.
Mitch Sherman from The Athletic, talking Big Red.
Unleash the fury, Mitch.
Unleash the fury!
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Mitch Sherman is here with The Athletic, at Mitch Sherman on Twitter. Mitch, got your umbrella out?
Well, I'm inside, so I don't need it, but yeah, it's handy.
Shut down.
It's available and ready if I'm going to venture out. It's actually stopped raining where I'm at, but kind of a gloomy day.
It is, but Coach Rhule wasn't super gloomy after practice with the scrimmage update, and I want to start off, Mitch, with kind of your take, your reaction to Rhule's stance on the portal. Doesn't seem like there's any portal fear from Matt Rhule.
No, I think they're really at the core of how Matt Rhule builds his program. We're finding out, and we're hearing more about it this spring, is the value that he places in the people on his staff around him. And I'm not just talking about his offensive and defensive coordinator or even his position coaches. He spent a lot of time here this month talking about his nutrition staff. It's led by Kristen Coggin. His strength staff, led by Corey Campbell. The sports science department, led by Mitch Cholowinski. Gus Felder in player development. Those are names that you're hearing a lot. And I think that's, in Matt Rhule's mind, kind of a secret weapon for Nebraska. They are going to lose players in the portal. Every program is going to lose players in the portal. Not everybody can be a starter. You have guys on your roster who are going to want to play more, who are going to want to leave for whatever reason. Maybe it involves NIL. And that's going to happen. But the players that he wants in his program are the ones that value the things that he values, and he's banking that Nebraska will take advantage of that situation and do well in player retention to the point where the portal, sure, it's going to be there. It's going to be a factor. They hope to come out with a plus advantage. They've got 6 transfers in the program this spring who are new and all could contend for important roles on this roster. But it's not going to be something, if Rhule gets his way, that redefines the team every December and April/May.
Mitch, were you surprised to hear Matt Rhule say today, we haven't heard this cut here on the show, and I'm sure we'll get to it here in a second, that he explicitly said, yeah, I have evidence that other coaches have been tampering with guys on my roster?
He always says stuff, not always, but I'm not surprised so much when he makes a statement that, when he said it, it didn't really open my eyes that much. And then going back and listening to it, it did just because, it's not generally something you hear coaches talk about a lot, especially coaches in the Big Ten. You do hear that, I think, from maybe some Group of Five programs or FCS programs that don't really have much defense for something like that. The good thing about Nebraska is that, when schools come calling and whatever it is that they're offering players, Nebraska at least has a way to combat that. And it's partly through the NIL resources, but it's also through what I talked about a minute ago in that he wants players who want to be at Nebraska for the reasons that Matt Rhule has built this program the way that he did. If he had gone out and named some names, then that would have really surprised me. But he said what I think everybody knows, in that recruiting off of the rosters of other teams is something that happens often in today's college football.
Yeah, Mitch, Matt didn't name any names. Do you have any likely candidates?
Yeah. Mitch, just jump in the deep end of the pool.
Yeah,
Let's
I'll just start throwing it out there. We'll start with, I don't know. You can use your imagination.
Well, something that also surprised me about that answer, Mitch, was, just the fact that his players are willing to be transparent enough with him about other coaches reaching out, because I know that the player-coach relationship is supposed to be open and it's supposed to be transparent, but it still kind of feels like we're in a very wishy-washy state of this whole thing. So what does that tell you about not only Rhule but the staff about, like, hey, this wide receiver could come up and talk to his head coach saying, I just heard from X school, what should I do?
Well, it tells me that the players are buying into the things that Matt Rhule values. But I think you also have to keep in mind that there are probably players who heard from schools today that didn't come to Matt Rhule and show him those texts or say, hey, just FYI, X school in the SEC is hitting me up. There's probably some. If there are some who came to him, then there are most certainly some who did not come to him, and maybe that's because they've got things to think about. There will be some surprises. There always are. I think at Nebraska, the what they're bidding to do is to minimize those surprises, and something will happen. Maybe it's this week, maybe it's next week, maybe it's in the day or two after the spring game on the 27th when the spring is over and a player who Nebraska might really value has an opportunity to sit down for 24 hours, think about it, and with that deadline looming on April 30th to go into the portal, make a decision on that Sunday or Monday after the spring game and say, yeah, Nebraska's been good, but I think I can do better. And those kind of things will happen. I'm sure there's players out there who already on the Nebraska roster who already have that in their mind, and some of them may have heard from coaches and didn't share it with the staff today.
Mitch Sherman's with us, few minutes. Hail Varsity Radio. Mitch with The Athletic, at Mitch Sherman on Twitter. Mitch, I want to talk about physicality, specifically at the wide receiver spot. That was a topic of conversation, not only from Matt Rhule, press coverage, but also Garrett McGuire. And just what you foresee with Nebraska's offensive identity. They want to throw the football. They want to be able to throw the football, I should put it that way. And are you concerned about where Nebraska's receiving core is moving forward? Do you think by fall time they can be able to get some separation? At times they got separation and they weren't able to be seen by the quarterback, or at other times it was 1 count, 2 count, and the quarterback had to hold the ball because there wasn't any separation. What's your feel right now? They've at least circled this as an issue they're working on.
Yeah, I went into today before we heard that report from Matt Rhule about the scrimmage and before we heard from Garrett McGuire and Isaiah Nair, Alex Bullock, Jalen Lloyd, thinking that the receiving group is probably the most improved position on the team over the last 3 or 4 months. And I don't feel any different now that I've heard that. Rhule had plenty of positives to say about the receivers, in addition to his concern about their ability to get off press coverage in the scrimmage Saturday and their ability to win contested balls, ball skills. He referred to it as. Nebraska doesn't do a lot of press coverage with its own defense, as we heard today, and you know from watching Nebraska football, it focuses on winning battles down the field and breaking up passes, ultimately trying to intercept passes, which is an area where Evan Cooper and Tony White's players need to improve and are focusing on improvement. And Rhule did some things to create situations in that scrimmage that would lead to press coverage, things maybe that would be called penalties in games. He manufactured some situations just to put his receivers in positions where they would need to be able to learn how to get ready for that. I'm not so concerned about it because it's April 16th, and I think they have the physicality within them. We heard McGuire talk about how he's anxious for Malachi Coleman to get back on the field. He's rehabbing from shoulder surgery, and we saw him out there today in a green jersey. But McGuire believes that that Malachi Coleman has it in him and has shown it that he can be one of the better receivers in this group at fighting at the line of scrimmage, and it's probably because he's 6'4" and has size and speed, and they may not press him as much as you would someone else. I mean, you don't necessarily want to press a 6'4" guy who runs a 4.40 because you can be in big trouble if you don't do exactly what you need as a DB. So I think also Jamal Banks, we heard from I believe it was McGuire today, who said that Banks is better when he gets pressed. So it's not like the players are absent from this position group who can get off press coverage and make plays in that area. It's Rhule wants to see the group as a whole do a better job right now.
It's Mitch Sherman with us here from The Athletic on Hail Varsity Radio. And Mitch, we go to the stream for the next question, if you want to call it that. Walter chimes in and says, no positive buzz about the running back room, which is very concerning. In your eyes, is that concerning, or is that just the theme of the day today, that it's going to be wide receivers? But I think his comment there is deeper than just what we heard today. It goes back the past week or two.
Yeah, I mean, taking it literally, I would just say today was kind of wide receiver day. And last week we had offensive line day when Donovan Raiola talked to the media on Thursday, and it's going to be linebackers, I think, on this coming Thursday. I know Tony White's scheduled to do an interview, and we might be getting Rob Dvorak. There will be an E.J. Barthel day before the end of spring. I think that would have to be next week, and we'll hear about the running backs then. When the questions have been asked, be it to Marcus Satterfield or to Matt Rhule, they've been a little bit tempered in their praise. So I think it's a legitimate area to, I don't know if concern might be the right word. It's more just like a curiosity for me at this point, because I think that, like we talked about with the receivers having it in them to be good on the edge and good against press coverage, I think that this running backs group has it in it as a group to find a combination that works. The problem a year ago when Nebraska got all the way down to Emmett Johnson, who did a nice job, but he's somebody who started the year fourth among the running backs, is that they just were decimated by injuries. And a couple of those guys are still out. Gabe Ervin is limited and doing very little this spring. Ramir Johnson's in a green jersey doing what he can. So it's Quentin Ives, it's Dante Dowdell, the transfer from Oregon, who's learning the system, and then you have Emmett Johnson. So they're still lacking in having a full complement of running backs. And you get to August and you put 5 of them in that room and they're all healthy, and I think it looks more promising. But right now and in the spring game next week, when people watch them, and there's going to be walk-ons who are getting carries, and you probably will come out of the spring and say, all right, that's an area that, at least on the offensive side, and maybe on the whole team, that is at the top of the list of places that there are question marks surrounding.
Mitch, we'll check in again soon. Thanks for the time today, bud.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Open phones, you want to chime in, 489-1240, or jump in the stream, Hail Varsity YouTube channel. You can subscribe and like there. Also, Hail Varsity Radio, Twitter at HVarsity Radio. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark. Husker Baseball gets rolling at 6. I have not peeked outside, but it looks like there's a little more sunshine for that 6:05 start. 489-1240, 489-1240 to get in. And just from a portal standpoint, there's a lot of buzz here in the stream we'll get to, and also some thoughts on Michigan getting probation. We'll see what that means with Harbaugh gone. But you've got two guys that are in the portal right now from Nebraska. Eric Fields, former linebacker, Corey Collier, former 5-star safety that Nebraska got a year ago from Florida. Steven tweeted at us earlier today, and at Herbal Essence is Elijah's Twitter handle at Schmidt_radio, my Twitter handle at C_Clark_27 for Connor Clark.
And don't forget at HVarsity Radio for
right,
the show.
Yes. But he asked, is it NIL or playing time? And I don't know with Collier, but we're talking a guy that is a former 5-star, right? You go to the Gators, and the Gators have had a great history of putting people in the NFL, especially in the secondary, and didn't work out there. And he spoke to the media a few times last spring, didn't see a ton of time last fall. And you look at that back end, I mean, it's pretty set and settled. I mean, the ink isn't drying, but you feel good about the options. And listen, it probably, if I'm going to lean, is going to be about playing time. And you've just got a crowded secondary. We said what are one of the position groups to watch with this portal opening, and it's going to be the secondary. And, you know, if you're Collier, you're going to be onto your third team. You've got that 5-star pedigree out of high school. You just don't have a whole lot of film to show right now of Saturdays in the fall. And that's just, it's a depth chart thing. So we'll see where Collier ends up with Fields. I mean, he's a dude that everyone was excited for, Nebraska talked about. I don't think they overhyped. I think they look at the physical specimen and the speed that Eric Fields has, and the guy wasn't part of fall, ended up getting sent home. So those are two guys that just didn't make a dent, or maybe, again, I'm speculating here, are just a little impatient, or it just didn't work for. The thing is you can't lose some of the guys that you're counting on. And the guys you're counting on right now are who? You're counting on your two big hosses in the middle. You're counting on your offensive line. I mean, quite frankly, that assumed 5, the Ben Harts, right? The Teddy P's, the Scats, your guards. Your running back room is, we just talked about, a little unknown, but you don't want to lose a guy like Emmett, who's put in the work. Your quarterback room, I don't think you'll lose whoever doesn't start. I don't think you lose anybody in the quarterback room. Your wide receiver room, I think you've got a great mix. I think you've got an amazing chemistry, quite frankly, in the wide receiver room. And Nebraska's kind of in flux right now, trying to figure out who their second level is going to be defensively. What you can't have is some of those second-year guys, Elijah and Connor, get tempted. But I don't think they will, because they were guys who had roles, and they've seen their work pay off under Coach White. So I just, these are two names. You'll probably have a few more guys, but if you do have a few more guys, they're guys that are up against it when it comes to playing time. They weren't part of an already pretty large rotation on defense.
Oh, yeah, I feel like we're got to see at least 1 to 2 more guys into the portal from the defensive back room alone, just based on how those numbers work out. And, I mean, there's two different sides of this. There's the playing time side of things. There's the NIL side of things. A lot of times these two things go hand in hand. With Collier, I look really hard at the playing time side of things. When was the last time we really talked about him? Probably the week after Michigan, when Singleton went down, as being a guy that could maybe fill those shoes. And then Phelan Sanford comes in and performs really well. Corey Collier just never made enough of an impression to get on the field here at Nebraska. I think that's a guy that you say, with all the numbers in the room, the defensive back room, I should say, you wish him the best, and you hope he can find a landing spot that he can make an impression with. Fields. don't know the full story behind why he left here, but he's a guy who's too athletically gifted to not be playing college football or playing some sort of collegiate sport. That dude is a fantastic athlete. You also tip your cap to him and wish him all the best. You hope he finds You hope he finds a landing spot that sticks for him and that can showcase his athletic talents. Just the reality of the transfer portal. Depth is hard to come by in the transfer portal era because of guys wanting playing time and guys wanting to go make a name for themselves. I don't think there's any hard feelings with either of these guys, and I think there's probably going to be more guys coming from the defensive side of the ball, especially that secondary. There's just too many names, too many guys in that room, and only 4 to 5 guys that are actually going to be playing in the secondary. So I think we probably got to see a couple more there, but it's nothing alarm bell, nothing that is sounding the alarm bells just yet. Schmidt laid out the one circumstance to me that would set off alarm bells, which is second-year guys who got playing time last year. You're talking your Prince Wills and your Cam Linharts.
You don't want your next 2-year starting crew.
Yeah.
Out.
And those are the guys, to me, I think you worry about somebody coming in and dropping an NIL bag at their feet and saying here, because it's hey, you have some playing time in Nebraska. We need you more. Not only will we make you a starter, we'll pay you handsomely to come and be our starting defensive end or linebacker or whatever it may be.
And then
that's what you worry about more.
Nebraska can no doubt have the resources to counter that, but it comes back down to who are you recruiting, right, fellas? It is what type of kid are you recruiting? What's their maturity level? Do they understand the air quote process or the grind? And I think Nebraska's done a good job of identifying, all right, does a kid like ball? Does he get it? Everyone's a little immature when you get to college, but what's the maturity level of said player? And you're not going to get BS'd by this staff. That's the biggest difference with Nebraska football right now, is that this staff is going to tell you maybe what you don't want to hear, but you're going to know where you stand and where they think they can help you get better so you can get that playing time. And that's the game changer. It sounds so simple, but it's not always that day and way of life in college football anymore. It's going to be Matt Rhule sitting down and having lunch with you. It's going to be your position coach, your teammates. The chemistry part is going to keep more defectors than a lot of programs, and that's been an emphasis because it's been a priority for Matt Rhule when it comes to how he wants to get this rebuild going.
Something interesting, too, is that what Mitch said about a surprise, I think it's inevitable. I mean, I think that's fair to say.
Maybe a name or two.
Yeah, I'm not saying like a crazy amount of players or a crazy name enters the portal, but some guys that you expected not to leave will probably leave just because of how many other opportunities, A, there are out there, and B, just because of, money. And so
life-changing money for an early 20-year-old to have maybe $500,000 thrown at you.
I mean,
that's crazy.
Here's what I think. It's about what the staff does to, and this goes back to your recruiting point too, to combat that, to respond to that. Okay, you lose a guy you didn't think you were going to lose. How are you going to replace him? How are you going to fill that void? That's what I'm interested to see. I'm also interested to see if we do get that surprise. I think we will. Who will it be? Obviously, I have no idea, but that would be something to look out for, and I'd be really interested to see how they move forward with that void that will be left on the team.
With the downer take of the day, it's Connor Clark.
I'm sorry. It's just reality.
Well, the void will be filled by the next man up.
I'm sorry, they're going 12-0.
Well, yeah, we'll hear from Matt Rhule. We'll hear from Will Compton in Bussin. That's on the way.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Well, our friends, the Husk guys on Twitter, the proposed 70-team Super League for college football, leaking its extremely regional flavor with these proposed Super Leagues. How does this grab you, fellas? Michael Bruntz is 10 minutes away. Matt Rhule comments, Coach McGuire comments, Will Compton, and some excerpts from his Bussin' sit-down in Lincoln. But the good old Midwest does not include Nebraska, but the Plains region does. BYU, Colorado, Iowa, Iowa State, Kansas, K-State, Minnesota, Utah, Wisconsin, Nebraska. I love that. Get you the Buffs every year. Get you Iowa every year. Kansas with Coach Leipold, that'd be awesome. Minnesota's always a fun although not successful, road trip. Whiskey, Utah, and Winningham.
BYU's football stadium is at the base of a mountain.
I know.
How are they in the Plains division?
Here's the bigger concern.
Two things can be true. One, I would love these matchups.
You're worried about the mountain. I'm worried about the alcohol. There is
if
none
we're going to
in
go
Provo.
geographical, let's go geographical.
I'm worried about neither of those things. I'm worried about how any TV network makes money on this Plains division. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day.
Wow.
And I'm not wrong.
Elijah
No, you're
going
not
full
wrong.
monopoly.
I'm not wrong. How the hell is anyone making money on those games? Like Nebraska.
Somebody's got to be good.
Nebraska's not the draw it used to be. I looked at those teams there and I say, which of those is drawing a national TV audience? And I'm talking about Nebraska within the past 10 years. Maybe Nebraska's
Luke
different
Fickell,
4 years
damn
from
it.
now. None of these teams are drawing TV eyes, and that's why I think this will never happen. I do think.
No, the Big Ten and the SEC are not going to give up their power nor their money.
Well, I think there probably is a time somewhere down the road in college football where there is a super league. I would consider that likely.
And you might even have some divisions.
There might even be some divisions with some regionality. That is not going to be the division. That is not going to be the regionality. You got to have names in the division that are going to draw a national TV audience to make it worth your time. I think a lot more likely is we get something of a pod system in a super league.
Sure.
With some names that are somewhat regional that, you know what, there's rivalry involved that can get it going, but then you still get to match up Nebraska with your Ohio States and Michigans and good teams, the helmet games in order to draw in the eyes. That's what I think is a lot more likely, maybe 14 pods in a 40-team Super League.
The helmet opportunity you have with the existing Big Ten right now, where Nebraska's getting Michigan, they're getting Ohio State, they're getting Washington, they're getting Oregon, they're getting USC, UCLA, and of course, Iowa and your non-conference Colorado. Stop me if you've heard this West Division before. Arizona State, Cal, Oregon State, Stanford, USC, UCLA, Washington, and Washington State. Oh. You mean
hello,
the
old
Pac-10?
friend.
The Southwest. Stop me if you've heard these teams together before. Arkansas, Baylor, Houston, TCU, SMU, A&M, Tech, Texas, the old Southwest Conference. With a splash of Oklahoma and Oklahoma State.
Well, Nebraska's the Big Eight with a splash of Utah and BYU.
That is true.
Don't forget Iowa.
Wisconsin.
Well, sorry. I still think
It's like the Big 8 and the Big 10 had a baby.
Get this. Elijah Herbel's proposal moving forward, a 64-team super conference, quote-unquote, mostly the Big 10 and the SEC. There's pods of 4.
And all of them make the NCAA tournament.
No, there's pods of 4 for 16 pods, the winner of each pod. So you play all the teams, but 9 games are just other helmet games.
The true question is this.
16 teams make the playoff, 1 from each pod.
The Big 8 and the Big 10 had a baby. Would the baby be cute? No.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back with you, Tower 2 at Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark. As we get rolling in, Red Wine 65, he has a portal wish list. We need a rush end, he says. It'll terrorize opposing quarterbacks like Lawrence Taylor. I don't know that Lawrence has any eligibility left at North Carolina. He did leave early. But sure, Red Wine, you're right on, man. Get a rush end. I think you've got some candidates there to get after the quarterback. A guy that I think was pretty vicious off the edge in his day, one Michael Bruntz from Husker 24/7 Sports, at Michael Bruntz on Twitter. Bruntsy, we're doing the phone, and we've got your Raleigh Fingers request up for a cover that we may invoke here. How are you doing today?
Not bad.
Now, Michael, still have us?
Let me redo that.
Yeah, we're going to try and reconnect with Bruntz. Either that or he's on top of the Haymarket press box.
Let's hope he hasn't been struck by lightning.
No. Let's see if we have him.
Man, I was going to ask
all sorts of crackly.
I was going to ask him the hard-hitting question about Lawrence Taylor. Like, the inspiration. I didn't realize Michael Bruntz was such a fearsome force off the edge.
I'm making a lot up, but I'm just Bruntz is that quiet killer dude. But at Michael Bruntz on Twitter's where you follow him.
You ever heard the soundbite from Lawrence Taylor about how he thought like smoking crack before practice made him better at football? You ever heard that story?
the urban legend about Walter, the Philly fan, checks in. You'll need a brick of Coke.
That's what I was saying.
Like LT.
That's what I'm saying. Maybe some crack.
No, and we're laughing about some poor guy's demon. But no, Lawrence.
He thought it made him better at football. So
no, Lawrence people would send Lawrence companions. Okay, he's on the road. They'd send Lawrence companions, and
furry four-legged friends, I assume.
No.
I know what you mean.
No. But he'd come into the locker room saying, guess who's had 2 hours of sleep, fellas? And go have, 3 sacks. Bruntz, we got you back. How are you? We got off on a Lawrence Taylor tangent.
Oh. I don't know how. I don't think I want to know how you got off on a Lawrence Taylor tangent, so I'll just let my imagination run wild. I'm assuming that you guys were talking about your weekend.
No one took a chainsaw to our sports car, a la the, what was the movie with Pacino? Help me out, Bruntz. With
Any Given Sunday?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, 20-plus years ago. I referenced you being a beast off the edge back in your day.
We were wondering if Michael Bruntz had ever smoked crack and gotten after the quarterback.
Is the answer. No is the answer as he hangs up. Phone problems again.
Well, maybe he's gotten after the quarterback, but probably not the first part.
Right.
Is that a euphemism for smoking crack?
Well, Bruntz is getting after the quarterback again.
He's late to the interview. He's getting after the quarterback.
Oh, he's having phone problems. So today, as we bring this thing back, we talk Nebraska football. It's wide receiver day, Bruntz, and if you could circle a wide receiver, who are you most excited to see this fall?
I'd probably Jamal Banks. I think that's at the top of the wish list. Just given that, you see him in person. Nebraska has not had a Jamal Banks on its roster in a while. I mean, he's every bit of the 6'4", 210, 215, or whatever it is that he's listed. And, he's that big-bodied target that you like to have that can make contested catches in the red zone and all that stuff. He's also, done pretty well off the field with leadership and what have you. But I think he'd be at the top of the list. For newcomers or guys that we haven't seen much of, Ja'Cory Barney's near the top of my list. You watch him in what little we get to see, and he's just a very sudden athlete. And I know that Nebraska felt like they got an absolute steal out of South Florida whenever he committed to Nebraska over Miami. And, to his background, I mean, he's a guy that played quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and never was really able to just focus on the wide receiver position. And I'm intrigued by what he can be in this offense. So those are the two that I'll kind of have eyes on, I think, when we get to April 27th.
There was some discussion today, Michael, from Coach McGuire about the importance of big-bodied wide receivers in the Big Ten. And I'm thinking back, like, the last true impact guy Nebraska had that was big-bodied was probably Stanley Morgan. And whenever you look at these two newcomers, Naor and Banks, do either of them have a little bit of Stanley Morgan in them?
Well, I mean, and with all respect to Stanley, I mean, he was maybe 6'1". Mm-hmm. Like, he played significantly bigger than he actually was. But he was a guy that was not afraid to go into traffic, go over the middle, make a contested catch. He just had, like, swagger and confidence. And I think that just goes so far to, being able to make those tough catches. And, I think Nair, I think Banks both. I mean, they've got the experience factor. With Nair, you're hoping that he can kind of get back to more of what he was at Wyoming and kind of shake off what happened to him at Texas, where he really didn't do all that much. But, I mean, I think those are the two guys that can give you a little bit of a different, kind of like you said, I mean, just a different look than maybe what you've had. And, I mean, I think the conversation's kind of been there for the last week or so that Nebraska needs to be able to handle press coverage better than they did last season. And it's still a work in progress. And, you can kind of do that with quickness, but as a cornerback, it's a little bit tougher to come up and just jam a guy who's 6'4", 210. Like, you got to respect that size a little bit more. So I think that's a little bit of a different look. And I know the conversation this time last year was about how different the wide receiver room looked, but I really like the mix of new guys and veterans. And I think, Jalen Lloyd, to me, too, as a smaller guy in that room, is a potential breakout candidate just based on, kind of the relationship that he's kind of built with those quarterbacks and what he was able to do last season with that elite speed.
Michael, there was a comment in the stream earlier, and I know today was wide receiver day, but this was regarding the running back room and how there really hasn't been too many, positive things said about the room. Not that it's being bombarded with negative things, but does that concern you at all, the lack of just kind of overall attention positively that room has gotten?
Yeah, I get that. And it's hard because you kind of need to be in scrimmage settings to get a better sense of what that room can be. When you're tackling to the ground and guys are able to break tackles and things like that, it's a little bit of a different conversation than maybe some other position groups where you can kind of get a sense for things of, 7-on-7 and running routes on air and that kind of thing. I think right now it's just a little bit of an incomplete picture because you don't have Gabe Ervin fully participating. Ramir Johnson's been limited somewhat to this point as well. And, for that reason, I think you're probably going to leave the spring, kind of with some things up in the air. And even a newer guy like Dante Dowdell, who I think people have a lot of excitement about, he's still new to the program, still new to kind of getting the sense of how things work at Nebraska, and that's going to take some time too. So I agree. I mean, there hasn't been a ton of buzz about that room, but I think that's kind of endemic to the room as well. Is that you just it's hard to get a good read on that group until you kind of see it with your own eyes.
Michael Bruntz with us here on Hail Varsity Radio, Husker 24/7. It's where you read Bruntsy at Michael Bruntz on Twitter. Going to talk portal for a moment. Fields and Collier gone. And your concern level out of 10 is what? What's the number? I mean, Matt Rhule was calm today, but Bruntz, are you thinking you're going to have a surprise or two?
Yeah, I mean, the two guys that were connected to Nebraska, I mean, they haven't been around the team. I mean, Fields has been gone since October, November maybe, and Collier hadn't been around the team much at all this offseason. So I think that was kind of expected over there and not a huge deal in terms of the depth. But, I think that Nebraska, I hesitate to go too hard on the paint on these takes with the portal because you just never know. But, I mean, I do think that it helps when you have the culture that Nebraska has. I don't think that you're going to see any, huge, movements and just mass exodus into the portal once spring ball's over. I wouldn't be surprised if you see some guys that get to the end of the spring and feel like maybe they're more buried on the depth chart or they have some hard conversations about what their role might be and they choose to move on. But I think that, Matt Rhule, intentionally has kind of struck the right tone in the transfer portal era where, they make guys want to stay, which, I mean, that doesn't sound that novel of a concept, but it kind of is right now in college athletics. So, I'm not expecting there to be any huge movement, but at the same time, I mean, Nebraska's pretty much full on scholarships right now. They've got other guys on NIL deals. So there's probably going to be some attrition just based on the number of guys they have on the roster because they still do have a pretty sizable roster as they get to the end of spring here.
Michael, whenever you hear what Matt Rhule had to say today about tampering in the transfer portal, how big of an issue do you think tampering is in college football today?
Oh yeah, I mean it's kind of shocking to hear him say that, but it happens. I mean, it happened last spring with guys at Nebraska. He said it had happened this spring already too. I mean, I think that's just kind of the nature of college sports right now, and I don't really know how you police it. Unless you're turning guys in, or I don't know if coaches start naming names publicly, if that changes things. But, I mean, there's just such a lack of oversight right now on how all of this stuff works that, unfortunately, you can kind of do that stuff. And it used to be you'd go through a 7-on-7 coach or an AAU coach or kind of back channel things a little bit. And that probably happens now too. But I think some coaches are just getting a little bit even more brazen with it and just reaching out to the kid directly. So, I don't know what the answer is to make it stop, and it happens. I mean, that's just the fact of the matter. So we'll see if the NCAA can kind of wrap their arms around it and figure it out. But it just feels like one of those things that's going to be hard to police.
Michael, let's head over to the Diamond here real quick. Nebraska, Creighton, number 2 tonight. What does Nebraska need to do to get it done? They've lost 4 out of their last 5 despite having 2 straight pitchers of the week. How does Nebraska kind of get off that skid?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the numbers for April, the big change has kind of been the struggles with the bullpen. Right now in the month of April, they've pitched about half the innings that they did in March and given up just about the same amount of runs to this point. The walks are up from what they have been, and the offense has actually been hitting at a better rate the last few weeks, but the bullpen has not been able to get those shutdown innings that are so important. So that's kind of the key going forward. Nebraska is basically starting this stretch of games that are really important for kind of what the long-term trajectory of this season is going to be. You've got Creighton tonight, you've got Maryland coming in here, you've got a midweek against Kansas, and then you've got Iowa coming in here the weekend of the spring game. So this is the time where you kind of got to get things figured out a little bit. The starting pitching has been really good, like you said, but just kind of getting the thing over the finish line has just been a little bit more of a challenge. So that they need to be better and throw more strikes there.
We've got Walter chiming in with Gavin Griffiths. Bruntz, I know you're all over Husker basketball. The transfer from Rutgers looks like he may be added to Nebraska's roster. You pick up the point guard from Utah. Real quick thought on what Fred's been able to do here the last 24, 48 hours.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's doing kind of what he did last season. I mean, you're finding experienced guys that have played a lot of basketball. In the case of Worcester, the point guard from Utah, I mean, it's a guy that's been in over 100 games in his career and played for a really tough-minded coach in Craig Schmidt. So that was kind of one of the, everybody's kind of focused on the bigs and how they're going to add size and that kind of thing. But, to get a veteran point guard, I know they really like Aaron Eulis and what he can be long-term. I don't know what his situation is going to be with everything that went down at Iowa last year. But, that addition in particular with the point guard spot kind of caught my attention because that was one area that even last year was kind of lacking. And if you can get a veteran point guard that can kind of run the ship and get everybody where they're supposed to be, I mean, that's huge in Fred Hoiberg's offense.
Michael, with Gavin Griffiths, sport goggles, yes or no?
As somebody that is very challenged in the sight department, I'm all for the goggles. And actually, I would like them to be bigger. Like, everybody kind of does, like, the goggles now that look like the Oakleys from back when I was, like, in high school. I would love it if they went back to the Rambis goggles, like the Worthy, James Worthy, like Kurt Rambis type stuff. Although Rambis just wore the frames, didn't he?
Yeah,
that was...
and he had tape because undoubtedly they get shattered between the Pistons or the Celtics.
Yeah, yeah. Kevin McHale hitting him with a clothesline probably. No, I think if you, I support the goggles. I think if you go back to the bigger goggles or just the glasses themselves, I like that look even more.
Well, the trick was to just pull the guy's goggles down while you're standing and waiting for a ball to be inbounded.
I think it's 2024 and contacts are,
maybe. Unless you get the old eye socket rearranged with an elbow. Bruntz, enjoy baseball tonight. Thanks for the time.
Anytime, thanks.
There he is, Michael Bruntz, with us from Husker 24/7 Sports. We'll hear from Rhule next.
Hail Varsity Radio is live. Now, back to Schmitty.
Schmitty's a great guy, but he don't have a brain.
And Elijah.
You want me to speak? When I point at you, yeah.
On Hail Varsity Radio.
So some names to shout out here in hour 2. Ascent, Moonbot 7 in. Of course, Dion is here. Moonbot's, what does he say here in the stream, Elijah, when it comes to the candle scent he wants from one Elijah Herbel, the candle maker?
He says Elijah's roasted oats candle scent.
Does it smell like the old granola bar?
That's what I don't know.
Kind of the honey granola?
I don't know. What does roasted oats smell like to you, Connor?
I don't know why my mind went to like the nuts they sell at the Bass Pro Shop. I know those aren't oats, but like that kind of smell, like the sugar peanuts or whatever that they make. Those are roasted. Those are really good too.
Yeah.
Moonbot says grape nuts.
Sure. Those are pretty solid. You need a lot of sugar.
Roasted oats. How do I go about that?
I don't know.
You could just
give me the oatmeal. No? Vanilla too weak?
Sawdust and drywall for Dion?
Ooh, now there's a candle.
You do
There's
that.
a candle. That reminds me of my childhood whenever my dad would wake me up on a Saturday morning for forced labor on the job site. Time to go.
Shed ain't gonna build itself.
It's always the framers are done. We're going to go sweep out the job site and shim the doors. And never, Elijah, it's a nice relaxing day of playing on your PS2. Never that.
Steven wants the stripper scent. And that is Brass Monkey and Shame.
I guess.
What does shame smell like to you?
Some sort of cotton candy deal. I mean, if we're being honest, walk into the club, say hi to the wife. I mean, it smells like
Shame's what? Cotton candy?
Well, you know, the cotton candy perfume that's out there. Whatever it smells like in those places. What?
Just start renaming it Shame and Macy's.
Can we do some audio?
It's up to you guys.
Sure. You just gonna keep throwing grenades?
Yeah.
Now, Shame on sale for Mother's Day.
Yeah.
I'm crying.
Okay. Well, you made me laugh.
I have never heard anyone say, what does shame smell like? Cotton candy.
Well, you're the one that's getting into candle making. There's your first flight.
The next scent, Schmidt's shame, and it smells like cotton candy. You don't tell anybody.
It smells like a carnival.
Well, yeah, that works. Again, no offense intended to those who
carnival workers.
Yeah,
carnival workers checking us out. Let's hear from.
Good luck transitioning this.
Yeah. Okay. No shame in Matt Rhule and how things are going with this spring session. I did my best there. All right. So
it was all right.
Yeah, it was fine. But how about when we talk about the push and the pull here of the turnovers versus the takeaways, right? How do you balance that as the head coach? You want your offense to be crisp and not turn the football over. You want your defense to go get the football. How's that tug of war going?
Yeah, well, I mean, we just push it on both sides, and then the result, I don't get caught up in the result. You know, to me, it's like I was laughing. What was great about the scrimmage for me on Saturday is normally you stand back there by yourself. I was back there. I made Nash. Nash had a clipboard out there. He was charting things for Terrence. I don't know what he was charting. I had Ty out there. I had Giff, and I was telling Giff, like, the hard thing as the head coach is when you create a turnover, you're fired up for the defense, you're angry at the offense, and vice versa. So rarely are you really happy in a scrimmage. You give up a big play, great job offense. What are we doing on defense? You know, really, it's just more about the process of it. Like, you know, are we on defense? Are we attacking the ball? Are we punching at the ball? Are we? You know, the quarterbacks weren't live, so that most of your turnovers come from the quarterback position. And then offensively, are we protecting the ball? And you know, the quarterbacks might not turn the ball over because they're not getting hit, but if they have one hand on the ball in the pocket, it's eventually going to be a problem. So I just try to stay very process-oriented and look at the tape. But, yeah, we're trying to push it on both ends because, you know, we had 31 turnovers last year. That's obviously way, way, way too many. We only took the ball away 14 times, including on special teams once. So taking the ball away 13 times is not nearly enough. You know, you look at most most championship caliber teams, like they're in the 20s. So we're pushing it on both ends.
So good response there on how he looks at it. More from Coach Rhule. As we got off on the wrong foot this segment, and all innocently started enough is what scent, I said flavor almost, what scent should Elijah make for his first flight of the candles?
Don't get me started on the stripper flavored candle.
No, we don't want to do that. We're going to stick with football here, and more when it comes to the concern or lack thereof with the portal. Matt Rhule really good here when we talk culture and just his team's mentality.
I think if anybody on our team wants to go in the portal, it's open today. That's their right. Obviously no one has yet. I don't anticipate anybody going in. When we get done with spring, we'll have a couple days to see if something's best for them. Our guys are really transparent. We've had players on our team already have people from other teams contact them, come in, walk in, say, Coach, look at this, show us a text message, show us this. It's a sad state of college football, but the problem's not the players. Let me start there. The problem's not the players. So I love our guys. I want everyone to be here, but I also want them, we had guys transfer to other places last year. I've talked to their coaches. I've talked to them, how they doing, and once you played for me for life. So maybe it's a unique challenge in terms of some guys, but we're pretty transparent with our guys. Like, if they want to come talk to us, we're here to talk to them. I ask the coaches after scrimmages to meet with guys one-on-one. I'm always available. So I just don't think it's really prudent, and maybe this is Pollyannish, but I don't think it's prudent for me to coach guys thinking about the portal, because the worst thing you can ever do for a young person is not have high standards for them and not push them to greatness. So if you're afraid of pushing them because they might go to the portal, then probably don't have the right guy anyway. I'm sure things will happen, good, bad, but we're just going to coach the guys, try to get the team better, and pour everything we have into our players, both on the field, off the field, and personally. And if something happens, it happens.
That's a great take. That's the realistic look. You can't control it. Your job as a coach is to make sure you get the right kid in, and he's here for the right reasons. Is he shopping? Is he trying to get paid? Does he want to come in? Does he want to work? Does he understand that it ain't handed, it's earned? All those things, and that's part of your evaluation process. So the topic of press coverage, fellas, it was tough at times to see Nebraska not get open downfield or over the middle. It was also tough to see him get open and be there for a wide open throw, and the quarterback, whoever it was, not make the throw. You lock onto an early target, and somebody was wide open at the sticks. Happened too many times. But can Nebraska get better at physical defensive back play?
Yeah, good and bad. We are significantly improved in that room. The guys have grown up. We brought some players in. The freshmen are really good, so we're making some big plays. I don't know if our ball skills in the scrimmage were what I wanted. We had too many drops, in my opinion, or tough catch plays. Our we're not a big press team, and so if you guys go back to me talking about early on about us having the ability to handle guys getting physical with us, we don't play a lot of that, so we don't see a lot of it, so I've had to manufacture some of that. I don't know how we're handling that. In fact, I'll say this. When I have seen us get pressed, I don't think we've improved enough at it. But the great thing about Garrett is he's one of those coaches. For a young coach, he's not real defensive. He's like, okay, we need to improve this, and this. But our route running, our speed, our effort, our knowledge is been really a great jump. There's just things to improve. Ball skills, catching the ball with pressure on, hard catches. And the biggest thing for me is just still, we're going to go face some teams this year, and they're going to line up and they're going to grab you at the line of scrimmage, and you might get one call or two, but you're not going to get 50. So you better learn, to fight for yourself. And so, again, everyone sees the wow plays. We put out the highlights every day. Everyone sees the catch over the top, the one-handed the shoulder catch, but there might be 3 other plays where we couldn't get off press. And so it's our job just to keep working on the things we're not great at. And I think that's the main thing moving forward is, just continuing to improve our ball skills and handling press and handling people that are aggressive with us.
Let's sneak in Coach Rhule, not interested in balancing lack of physicality. It's going to be a a tough camp, and that's how it's going to be.
Yeah, I don't think about it. We practice. We're not going to have a tag-off scrimmage. We're not going to. We there's a lot of days where we thud. We don't tackle to the ground. Like our tackling to the ground reps are at a minimum, but we're 5-7. We're 5-7 until we change that. And so we have an amazing fan base and a lot of positive stuff around us all the time. That excited for the new year. We're 5-7 until we're not. And so, and if we were 11-1, I'd be like, hey, we lost the game. And if we were 12-0, I'd say, yeah, but that doesn't. I mean, we are going to always practice physical. How do you master your craft in this game if you don't do it? And so, there's a lot of people win a lot of different ways. I'm not in any way talking about anyone else. I'm just talking about for us. I want to take great young people. I want to watch them get a degree, maybe 2 degrees, have a great experience here, but I also want to develop pro players. And to me, lifting is great, and running is great, and teaching them the game is great. They've got to practice and play. So we are really physical. We put the Guardian caps on this year, which I'm excited about, but we're going to get guys banged up. Guys are going to get hurt. What I do believe, and I believe this with all my heart, is if guys learn to play full speed, the injuries get reduced. And so we try to do everything we can. We put grass in, everything we can to minimize the injuries. But, I mean, we have some soft tissue stuff. We have some guys that got hurt from the season. But we've had nothing happen this year other than Leslie, and he'll be back. That would affect the fall. So our job is to make sure we have a good team. We're 5-7. We got to practice.
Very realistic, and it's just part of doing business, guys. You don't want anyone to get hurt, God forbid, but you don't want to get hurt, embarrassed, and stomped because your team's a shadow of themselves physically week to week. And this is how it's going to be. And if Nebraska's in that conversation from a style standpoint of how do you get better Monday through Thursday, well, this is what Georgia's doing. This is what Alabama's doing, and it's what Nebraska used to do. Good for him.
Football is not a risk-averse sport.
No, you
cannot be risk-averse in football. You can take precautions, but you can't fully prevent injuries. I think that's where Matt Rhule's coming from, saying, hey, we need to get better, and we can't be so scared of injuries that we are too cautious to get better.
Yeah, no fear, right? We'll dive in. What's Will Compton have up his sleeve with his Bussin' tour?
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Winding through a Tuesday, it's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, Schmidt, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark.
You almost called me Carol, didn't you?
I did. Forgive me. The Hail Varsity YouTube. Like and subscribe there, please.
Was I going to be Jeff?
Maybe.
I'd be honored.
The Hail Varsity YouTube channel, Hail Varsity Radio Twitter. Give those a follow. Our socials, where you can watch the show as well. AM 590, Omaha's ESPN, KFOR Facebook and Twitter. Central Nebraska Superstation, Kearney Hastings, Grand Island. With Duda in the crew, 1460, 1550 News Talk, 900 in Columbus, and Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, where you can get the download of the podcast, 489-1240 or 800-825-5865. Ways to dial up across the Hail Varsity Radio Network. So let's hear a little bit from Will Compton. Did his tour not long ago with the Bussin' crew, and some excerpts that are out on Twitter from some of his sit-downs. He caught up with the Polar Bear. He caught up with Harburg. He caught up with Dylan Raiola and the head man himself, Matt Rhule. Time permitting, we'll sneak in some Garrett McGuire as well, specifically the sophomore. I think we're all pretty excited about Jalen Lloyd, where his jump has been. But let's hear from Matt Rhule. And this was, we hear from Dylan Raiola. This was his sit-down with Will Compton. When it comes to the flip, right, he got to it. About a minute here of the process and why Nebraska.
Talk to us about your recruiting. You were committed to Ohio State first, decommit, and then go to Georgia, and then you flip last minute to Nebraska. Take us through the recruiting process of Dylan.
Yeah, I mean, Ohio State, that happened fast. I wasn't really ready to commit, and then I went there a couple times and kind of was like, this is where I want to be, and then things changed, and Georgia's my first offer, so I always loved Georgia. Love Coach Smart. Moved to Georgia. I wouldn't regret it. I loved it. I don't know, after the season was over, I'm like, Dad, I want to do something different. Georgia's the best team. Yeah, I respect Coach Smart and everything he does, but Nebraska's the only place that you can bring back and it can mean something more than we just won a game or won a championship. I think if we do that here, it'll make a lot of people happy and be special.
Legacy,
yeah.
That legacy, Paul, important, and it's not necessarily a new storyline, but it's his words, his own words on the why, guys. And you can go get a title at Georgia, and hey, it's another title. And it may be another title in Lincoln, but man, it would be a lot of water after a long time in the desert.
Well, remember what he tweeted out the day he was making his visit to Nebraska? His little image he posted up on his Twitter about purpose. It was the definition of purpose. Tweeted that out.
The poem?
No, the poem was the commitment.
Mm.
The day he made his visit to Nebraska, all it was like a dictionary definition. It wasn't the true Webster. I looked it up. It was not the true Webster definition of purpose, but it was someone's definition of purpose and what it means to have a purpose in life. And that just kind of echoes exactly what that was. You can go win a game. You can go win a championship at Georgia. What's the legacy? What is your purpose in life when leaving a legacy? And I think that was a longer way to put Dylan's answer there is at Nebraska, there is a purpose for me. It's not just go out there and win some games and go make a whole bunch of money and hopefully win a championship. It's being somebody at Nebraska, being somebody that this state
go fix
can
the
rally
program
behind. And not just this, exactly. Not just like this state now can rally behind, but someone that can be remembered 15, 20 years down the road.
Continue the family name.
Well, yeah, but just flip it back to what it's supposed to be, at least when Dad was there. So Harburg was asked, what was your reaction? I'm pretty sure this is just start this clip real quick.
I think if anything.
Okay. Making sure I got it edited. But Harburg was asked, all right, dude, your reaction, you're the guy who won 5 games last year. What's the quarterback room feel? Especially when that Raiola moment happens when he says, I'm coming to Lincoln. Here's Harburg's reaction.
I think, if anything, like him committing, with all of the, following that he had, all the offers, being committed to Georgia, a powerhouse, and us flipping him, I think that just shows how far we've come as a program, what we showed last season. If you've got that many opportunities and you choose to come here to a team that, we didn't show everything that we could last year, but Dylan had all of those and chose to come here. I think that shows how our process is working. On top of that, Danny Kalen, great guy. I've known Danny since he was a freshman in high school, so I think we're starting to hit the rise of you want to come to Nebraska.
One thing to note there, listen to how many times, I don't think we're going to play this back, but maybe if you're listening in podcast form, you can rewind it. Listen to how many times there Heinrich Harburg there, when talking about himself and Daniel Kalen, says we and not I.
Sure. Listen, there's not threat in his voice of, here comes this. It's accepted competition, and may the best dude win the quarterback spot. But there's genuine support.
Well, and we cut out Will's question, but Will's question said, hey, what is your reaction? What was your reaction whenever you learned that Dylan was coming? And to have the answer that comes back and says, you know what? It shows we.
It's the endorsement of culture.
Exactly. It's exactly where I was going. It's a we before me culture. Something that Matt Rhule has preached about the team coming first. The team comes before me. That's exactly what Heinrich Harburg's answer there showed. It's the words matching the actions of a culture built in progress.
Mm-hmm. Coach Rhule was asked about his recruiting class despite a 5-7 record, and got to go be better than 5-7. You heard Rhule last segment saying, "Look, it's still 5-7, not good enough." But all things being considered, your first year at 5-7, there was some momentum picked up with the program.
Yeah, I mean, I think as you see this place, like, you know, and again, facilities don't. What do facilities do? They tell you that football is important here. Our fan base tells people that football is important here, and so we work our tails off. We work hard in recruiting just to get people here. Because I think once you get here, like you walk around Lincoln, you go downtown, you see the campus, you're like, oh snap, like this is a really, really cool place. I think the big thing is all along players could see like, hey, my history at Temple, you know, being 2-10, then being 6-6, and then back to back, you know, top 25 teams, you know, back to back conference champions. You know, top 25 at different times of the year. Going to Baylor, being 1-11, then being 7-6, then playing in the Sugar Bowl. I think people realize, hey, this is like a coach will try to build it the right way. So to be 5-7, maybe outperform. So I think a lot of the young players are like, all right, I see it. I see what they're trying to do. I see how they're doing it, and we're going to continue. We're going to continue to recruit well.
Good attitude and optimistic, but knows there's still a while. There'll never be a finish line that they cross, but can they get in position to see the finish line, keep running towards it, and by the way, pass some other runners, i.e. teams in the Big Ten along the way?
Well, there is finish lines, but it's about finding a new finish line, I guess, because there's goals to achieve. There's things you need to do. I mean, I know the Big Ten has changed considerably, but like, go win the Big Ten West. Go earn a spot in the Big Ten title game. Maybe that comes after a bowl game. That's your first finish line. Then go win the West. Go win a Big Ten championship. Go make the college football playoff. Go win the whole damn thing.
You saying win the West pains me.
Because it was right there for the taking last year.
Oh, it's been that way for the last 5 years for a lot of people. I mean, Iowa's had some 10-win teams, but for the most part, it's been up in the air through November.
See, I'm not sad about seeing the Big Ten West go, Connor, personally.
I'm not sad either. I mean, give me Iowa on Black Friday.
Football.
Dude, it is. It is. But be a little better on offense, please. Because you got to go score points against people in the East.
Connor just loves punts.
You know?
Yeah.
Is it a Northwestern thing?
Maybe.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time on a Tuesday. It's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark. Reminder to get buckled up. Driving is a full-time job. Phones, food, and friends need your attention when you're not driving. Stop the distractions. Just drive. A message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. Email box you can send an email to is chris@hailvarsity.com. Subscribe and like the Hail Varsity YouTube channel and watch the show that way. Hail Varsity Radio, Twitter @HVarsity Radio. Give that a follow as well. Husker Baseball gets going in about 10 minutes from Haymarket.
And the rain's looking decent.
What's the radar look like?
I'm not a weatherman by any means, but this storm that's kind of circling around.
Oh, you're a candle maker.
I'm a jack of all trades.
You're a radio dude and a candle maker.
Real journeyman. I kind of do it all.
So are you going to get a food truck or just a farmer's market stand?
No, I have thought.
I shouldn't say a food truck, a candle truck.
No, I have thought about a food truck, though. But like more like a stand. You know what I think would the downtown Lincoln community needs on a Friday night or a Saturday night?
I think you could do the old market, too.
A walk-up window.
A walk-up window. And get this, walking tacos.
Yeah.
I think that would be a killing downtown on a Friday or Saturday night.
I think you need
I'm just giving out my
Cornhead Lager walk-up window on those.
I think that would be illegal.
I think you need a short rib, beef short rib walk-up window.
See, that'd be great, but I'm more thinking about like margins here, and I think I could probably cheaply make walking tacos and sell them to drunk people for way too much money.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like Connor, number one customer. So I've been thinking about that, but the farmer's market stand would be a possibility. My dad also has a small side business. It has not generated any money, but he roasts coffee. How about that? Roast coffee, like fresh beans roasted, along with candles. I think that would be a great farmer's market stand.
A candle and coffee store.
Ooh.
With Elijah Herbel.
C&C's.
Where you have a
wait, hold on. Don't slap my initials.
Microphone and headset in the backdrop. What are Korean corn dogs?
Korean corn dogs.
Yeah.
Moonbot 7 checks in with that. What is it?
So it's a corn dog.
Sure.
But instead of the traditional American batter, it's got like its own weird Korean batter on there. They look a little different. I've never actually tried one. They look fantastic. And you can get like the gochujang sauce on there as well, which sounds delicious.
We need the bang bang sauce.
We can do that too. This sounds like a lot more work than walking tacos, unfortunately. That's the beauty of walking tacos is they're so easy.
What's easier, making
really
a candle or
Never had a walking taco?
No, man.
You get the ground beef.
I did see...
And then you put it on top of a bit of
Fritos. We just got to
Fritos.
have our nightly food segment. I did see the McDonald's / now it's Sloppy Joe, but it's a Sloppy Joe that was a Big Mac Sloppy Joe.
Ooh.
That looked incredible last night.
Oof. That sounds delicious.
Yeah, that does sound really good.
delicious.
I kind of miss the old Sloppy Joe restaurants. Did you guys ever have those out here?
Yes.
There was the Tasties in town. They still have the
Tasties
food
was
truck.
phenomenal.
They still have the food truck.
48th and East Campus, onion chips burnt to a crisp.
You probably East Campus, like there's like all the apartments are popping up right there right now. I think the old original Tasties building is still there. I think
it had the most rusted screen door, but it was sweet. Jukebox. Yes, memories. 10 wins and a tasty. Okay, tomorrow we'll check in with Mike Babcock. We'll say hi to Evan Bland. And more thoughts, maybe a little for Coach Garrett McGuire. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Get the podcast, subscribe, and the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Like and subscribe. Thanks to Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark, Chris Schmidt. Back at you tomorrow at 4 with Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.